Good morning and welcome everybody. I'm just going to wait a few minutes for everyone to come in from the waiting room. But this is CoMoUK's AGM for 2021. If that's what you're expecting, welcome. If it's not, then you've joined the wrong meeting. Just some admin whilst we're just waiting for the last few people to filter in. If you can keep yourself on mute until the point we've got some questions at the end, that'd be great. Just any background noise. That's great. Just in terms of some housekeeping, we are using Zoom and we will be having some votes as we go through, which I'll explain a bit in more detail in a moment. But the way we'll be doing the votes is using the hands up function. So if you can use reactions, raise hand at the bottom of your screen, in most cases, at the point we have votes, that would be great. And I'll explain who is eligible to vote in a moment. So welcome everybody to the CoMoUK 2021 AGM. It's welcome from me, Matthew Clark. I'm the chair of CoMoUK, and it's welcome from Richard.
Hi everybody, good to have you here.
Richard's going to be present for the session, as indeed are other members of CoMoUK, but I'm going to chair the session. So thanks, Richard. We'll see you for questions in a little while. Thanks very much. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, I'll just give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We've got a bit of a procedure, so we need to approve the minutes from the 2020 AGM. The first thing we'll vote on. We will then be voting on new board members. We've had a number of board members who've been co-opted over the last year, so we'll be voting on that. Then I'll pass over to Martin, our treasurer, who will go through the treasurer's report. We'll then have a vote on reappointing of the auditors, and then finally I'll be providing a chair's overview of activities with CoMo in the past year, and there's an opportunity to ask questions to myself and also to Richard, Chief Exec, at the end. So thanks very much. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so just to explain the voting process. So we welcome all comers to the AGM, members and non-members. Members are eligible to vote, and we would encourage you to vote. You are a member if you are from an accredited operator. You are a member if you are an associate member that, through your company. And there's also you can be friends of CoMoUK as a member. So all of those three groups are eligible to vote. In the case of the first two, the operator members and the associate members, you're eligible for one vote per organisation. So if there are multiple people from the same organisation here, just have a little bit of discussion amongst yourselves, perhaps by email or something, just to make sure that you're not voting more than once. That would be great. If you're not a member and you'd like to join, you can find out more information on the website or email us on the email address there. Thanks very much. Hopefully that's clear. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the case of the first vote, we have shared minutes from the 2020 AGM. I think this is a good summary of those minutes. I'm not going to go through those in detail, but I'm just going to leave those on screen for a moment. What I will need for this vote is I'll need one person to propose that we accept these minutes and another person to second it. So I will ask that I could have one person to propose, and it will be first person who raises their hand. So if I'm going to ask someone to propose that we accept those minutes, please. I'll keep an eye on the hands in the sidebar. Okay. Oh, I saw a. Okay, I've got Kate Gifford is Martin with the hands up and Kate Gifford with a thumbs up. So I'll take that as proposed, and Kate, I'm going to take you as a seconder. Okay, that's how we're going to do that. So thanks very much. So it's Martin Hill is proposing and Kate Gifford is seconding. Okay, thanks very much. We can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so throughout over the year, we had a number of vacancies became available on the board. and these vacancies are what we call our operator vacancies. So we have evolved over the year from having two operators being represented to having three, representing the growth and change in the sector. So effectively, we have a bike share operator, we have a car club operator, and we also have a digital demand responsive operator. And these are the people who have been co-opted to the board. And as part of due process, we need to formally elect these operator representatives. These people will stand as operator representatives for 1 year, and then it will be opened up again for accredited operators. So what I need from here is I'm going to ask for somebody to propose each of the people in turn, and then we'll take a vote. So what we'll need to do is I will take each person in turn. I'll ask for someone to propose the be proposed on the board, and then I'm looking for a show of hands of people who are for that, and then I will pause and see if there are any people who are voting against. Okay, so I'll take it in turn. Antonio, if you can, sorry, Antonio, that's it. Just doing a straight hand. And I note that Georgia has changed her job title in the meanwhile, so she's now General Manager for UK and Ireland. A small change there. So if I can ask that I have the person to propose Georgia, and I've been Joe, if you're able to propose Georgia, I think we've discussed this.
Yes.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, so now if I can see a hands in favour of voting Georgie Exley onto the board as operator member for bike share. So I'm just looking for hands. Okay. And great. I'm just going to pause whilst we just capture that. I'm not going to read out all the names, but Antonia and CoMo staff are in the background. So this is voting for. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And I'm just going to ask if we can have those hands dropped, please. And if there's anyone who's going to vote against, if you can raise your hand now, please. Thanks very much. Okay, so I can confirm that George is elected to the board. Welcome, Georgia. Next, if we can go to Adam Toon. So Adam is Digital and Commercial Platform Director from Arriva Group. He's representing the operators in the DDRT, Digital Demand Responsive Transport Operator. So I think Kate Gifford has kindly offered to put forward Adam. Is that correct, Kate?
Yes, that's fine.
Thanks very much. And I can see a show of hands of people who can confirm they are voting for Adam to be elected to the board. Thank you very much. And this is to confirm, if I wasn't entirely clear, these are all three vacancies. We're not voting between these people. So just to confirm if that was not clear. So just waiting for those votes to be captured. Thank you very much. Okay, if we can drop those hands. Thanks very much. And if there's anyone who wants to vote against Adam being elected to the board, please raise your hand. Okay, that's great. So Adam, welcome. You're now officially on the board. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Mark Hodgson, who is with Co-Cars. This is representing the car club operator position. And if I can turn to, now my notes have phoned me. I've asked either Kate or Joe. I can't remember who I asked to put them on forward, so I'm sure they'll help me out.
It was me, yeah.
Thank you, Joe. And if we can have a raise of hands for people who would like to vote for Mark Hodgson onto the board. Great, we're just pausing whilst those votes are captured. Apologies for the slightly laborious process, but the technology is good, but we do just have to make sure that we're capturing this for our the appropriate due process. Thank you very much. We can lower hands on that one, please. That's great. And anyone who wants to vote against Mark Hodgson joining the board. Great. Okay, so welcome to Mark as well. So that's we've now brought all three operator members onto the board, and we welcome them formally. And we thanks very much for all your votes. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is now involving myself, so I'm going to hand over to Martin to conduct this part of the business.
Great, thanks, Matt. Yeah, so I would like to propose the re-election of Matt as the chairman of the CoMoUK board. So I'm actually going to say I think I'm going to propose that, and then if we can have votes for that. This is again a standard part of re-election. He's stood, I think now he's the longest standing board member, so he's then just standing for re-election now. Okay, so if you want to raise your hands to vote for Matt, we'll capture that. Okay. Yeah, I think we've got that. So if you can bring your hands down, and then if we have any votes against Matt being the next chair. We just need to make sure all our hands are down first. Okay, that's great. So I think that was all for me. So handing back to you, Matt, for the next slide.
Thanks very much. And
Welcome
now, welcome back. And it's a bit of a over to me and over to you, because I'm now going to hand over to Martin for the Treasurer's report and accounts for the previous year. So thanks very much, Martin.
Okay, great. If I can have the next slide just to bring up the core details. So I actually just want to give a little bit of background to CoMo's last year. I think you can probably see that it's actually been a very good year. It certainly wasn't when we started. The year began April 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic and the first lockdown. Just at the time when we were thinking about sharing, and the Prime Minister told everybody to go and buy their own private car. So what wasn't good, we were very concerned, and we actually took out during the year the bounce back loan from the government for £35,000. So we took that out during the year. But overall, the income held up very well, and a mixture of things sort of worked in CoMo's favour. I think at the time, being involved with the scooter trials was helpful. We also took the decision to shut the Leeds office, which had been the head office, and everybody went through and started to work from home. So some of our costs went down. And also when we actually look at, for example, the conference, we discovered that we could hold a very effective online conference, and that was actually more profitable. It costs a lot less to run an online conference than it does to do anything physical. So that's been very positive. The other thing, I think the reserves overall were perhaps a little low last year, and we've recalculated them in the current accounts to suggest we need reserves of just 118,000. And this fits in with Charity Commission recommendations, which is that you should have sort of 3 months running money available. So we've really had a year where we've been able to do that and rebuild that. And I would also really like to thank the all the employees, and particularly Richard and Antonio, who've been incredibly flexible and hardworking to sort of put in this type of performance last year while everything was going on. So I think it's been a very effective, good time, and we can now see that CoMo is in a good financial position. The reserves are adequate and perhaps a bit more than we need, and that really puts CoMo in good shape for the next year. If I could have the next slide, please. So this is just a little bit more breakdown of the income. So this is sort of pretty common that the grant income makes up just a little bit over 75% of CoMo's total income. That's currently spread across sort of 3-4 different grants, with the largest one coming from Transport Scotland, who provide over 50%. And you can see again the unrestricted income, the other 25% is on membership accreditation, individual consultancy, and then running the conference under events. That's what we've had, what we're showing here. So I think that's really just all really I just wanted to highlight. Again, if there are further questions or any other detail anybody wants later, do come back. All of this detail is available on the Charity Commission site, and you can see the history there, should you want to drill into any of that. Okay, thank you. So yeah, just to propose that we accept the 2020-2021 accounts. I assume we're doing this the same way, so if I could have somebody to propose that we accept them and then agree, great. Okay, thank you, Matt. And then do we need to vote on that as well? I actually don't know what the process is here.
But we don't need to vote, we just need someone to accept them. So it's just a proposal and second. Okay,
so I can just have a second. Great, Kate, thank you very much. Okay, thanks. Sorry, yeah, just to again follow on with the business, apologies. So we currently use Naylor Wintersgill as our chartered accountants and chartered accountants. And our proposal is that we continue to use them for next year. They've continued to work well with us as we run quite a lean finance organisation as we go through. So if I can have a proposer for that. Matt, again, thank you. And if I get that seconded as well. Excellent. Adam, thank you very much. Taking well to your new role. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Martin. So now I'm going to give a short summary of the activities for CoMoUK for last year. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I guess before we start, it's worth noting that it has been another unusual year for all of us on this call, I'm sure. And so CoMoUK has CoMoUK's roles remain similar, but the context that CoMoUK is working is very different. So we have, in terms of the sector, we've seen some parts of the sector have had very challenging times. Other parts of the sector have had very busy times. And as we change our travel patterns across the UK, there's a real opportunity for moving towards a more sustainable and shared transport. So I think that's a good kind of point to bear in mind as we're thinking about this. So CoMo's roles include 5 things here. I'm going to touch on those in a little bit more detail. But effectively development support, so helping to establish and grow shared mobility and its various forms across the UK. There's the sharing knowledge of the concept of different forms of shared mobility. As we've seen this year, we've effectively been introduced to e-scooters in the UK, which is something that was not on the table prior to that, and there's been a lot of work there, and we'll see a bit more of that in a moment. Linked to sharing knowledge, there's also research. So research about why these shared mobility modes are beneficial to people in society, and why the public sector and funders should be interested in these modes. Also research about how bringing these modes together. There's the infamous, and I think now, picture of mobility hubs, which has been shared through CoMoUK and is included in any document to do with mobility hubs that I've seen recently. There's the fourth area, which is influencing policy. So this is looking to the future and how government decides to prioritise funding and support different policy agendas. And then there's also the kind of the setting of standards. This is making sure that that shared mobility operations are run in a way that means that they are providing a good service to the end user, and are effectively being responsible in terms of their operations. And some of that is led by operators and the good work they do, and some of that is worked through with the public sector in terms of how those standards might work. So those are the main roles. So we can go to the next slide, please. So in terms of the development support, there are three main areas here. The first of which is an inquiry service. So CoMoUK fields a lot of inquiries from interested parties, and these typically are organisations, individuals, which are looking to start up in this sector, and sort of turn to CoMo for initial advice. This includes from the public sector, from community groups, also from the private sector, sort of property developers and the like, also new operators who are perhaps thinking about entering the UK market. There's also inquiries from press. So this can take a fair amount of time, and obviously when there are changes in the sector, which we've seen a lot over the last year, and there's an increased need for providing robust and accurate information, and just kind of also joining up people across the sector. It's important to note that the Scotland programme, funding from Transport Scotland, and there's a range of things that have been going on this year, just to highlight a number of those. So CoMo has been awarding a series of micro grants for setting up community shared transport schemes, and more than 10 grants have been awarded across Scotland for both car club and bike share schemes. You can see a range of guidance there. The one that's on the top is a community bike share guidance, which has been published in the last year. And also CoMo has launched a shared mobility knowledge centre to help facilitate the rollout of successful shared mobility across Scotland. Also, in terms of other work, you'll see there's a certain amount of consultancy support that CoMo gives, just calling out a number of projects that CoMo has been involved in the last year, including assisting Plymouth City Council on some work with mobility hubs, also East Fife Council on some work with mobility hubs, and again, mobility hubs with Gascoigne Estates, a private developer. Thank you. If we can go to the next slide, please. So in the kind of rapidly evolving world of shared mobility, there's always a need for guidance, and there's a range of guidance documents that CoMo has, and these are some of the documents that have been updated in the last year. The first one on the left is updated guidance on procurement of car clubs. That was supported by the Share North project. A series of guidance documents on mobility hubs, including one about delivery models. So I guess mobility hubs are quite a new concept, and understanding how those can be delivered with different partners and different funders and different people managing those is important, and this document is designed to help out with some of those questions. And then we've just got a little highlight of the employer action kit, which is helping think about how shared mobility can be used from an employer point of view, both with public and private sector clients there. All those are available on the CoMoUK website, and so I'd encourage you to go and have a look at those. Next slide, please. So knowledge sharing has always been an important part of CoMoUK's remit, and in the last year there's been a reframing of these knowledge sharing events, recognising that increasingly particularly in the public sector, officers are working across the shared mobility modes, so it's no longer working on bike share or car clubs or e-scooters in silos, and important to bring these discussions together. So CoMo has brought together a local authority shared transport forum, which covers cars, bikes and e-scooters. We've also added over the last year some new forums. Actually, going back to the local authority forum, it's worth noting that the way this operates is that it's sort of a closed forum for local authorities every other meeting, and then the meetings that intersect that, there are people who are invited who are from the private sector and so forth to share some knowledge. I think it's important that there is a more closed session that allows local authorities to raise some of those concerns that maybe they wouldn't want to raise in a wider audience. So the second bullet here, so we have a range of other knowledge sharing events with the sort of bringing digital demand responsive transport within CoMoUK. There's now a forum for that. Also for mobility hubs, which has got a really good audience. And then we have London and community forums. With all these, there's information on the website if you want to join, or if you want to have questions about where you might sit in these, and then you can raise that with CoMo staff or through the info email address. And finally, but last but not least, is the Scottish Co-Mobility Forum, which is part of the work that CoMo is delivering as part of the Transport Scotland programme. And you can see an example of one of the forums there, which is thinking about how shared mobility can deliver a greener, healthier future for Scotland. I particularly like the Scottish flag on the mobility hub there. Thanks very much. We can go to the next slide, please. So as part of knowledge sharing, bringing people together, general kind of understanding of what's happening in industry. I hope that many of you were able to join us for the Shared Transport Conference, which was happened earlier in the month. We're pleased to have one of the Transport Minister to open that session, and I think actually one of her comments has been reported in the press, the Daily Mail, none of that, and also the Daily Telegraph, where the quote, "Owning a car is an outdated 20th century thinking. We must move towards shared mobility to cut carbon emissions." So that's, I think, a great quote from a serving Transport Minister. As was noted earlier, we made the decision to go online with this conference for the second year. I think that it was always a challenge to know whether that was the right decision. I think in the current COVID situation, I think that probably was the right decision. And I think there were some excellent opportunities to listen to other people. What I think I'd take away from that is there's also a need to bring people together face to face for some of those more informal interactions. And so perhaps we'll think about how we can best do that over the coming year. But yeah, this was a really successful event certainly from what I saw and feedback. So we had 8 sessions over 2 days, over 640 registrations. With online conferences, it's very easy to register, and often you get quite a lot of drop off. We had almost 400 attendees, so that was a really good attendance from those who'd registered, with 51 speakers from across the UK and international, and also 26 companies that were involved to showcase their work. So well done for everyone involved in that. I certainly thought it was a good conference, and hope you did too. Next slide, please. Yeah, so research has always been part of the backbone of why shared mobility is important, and the Car Club annual report and the Bike Share annual survey have become industry go-to sources for evidence. These have been published for a number of years now, and they remain very important, particularly where we're seeing changes in travel patterns due to COVID and so forth. They will remain important. It's worth noting that in the forthcoming year, we'll be doing our first research in digital demand responsive transport and e-scooters in 2022. And for the first time, CoMo has been asked to do a regional cut of the car club data for Manchester. So that's something that's coming forward in the next year. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I think finally, in terms of influencing policy, there's a whole range of areas which these are five points. I'm sure there are more, but in terms of where CoMo has been working to try and make sure that shared mobility is included. And I think probably I can't do justice to the work that Richard and the team have done in terms of COP26 and making sure that shared mobility is written in some of those documents. I think decarbonisation is top of the list here, and I think that's absolutely right. That is a very important topic. Electrification sits within that, I think, but there's a lot of other work which, without work on these areas, shared mobility will be, the growth of which will be hindered. Planning is one of these. Obviously, with e-scooters, we're in a process where we have a series of trials, but the outcome of decisions on legalisation and the timelines of that are stretching out and not indeed certain. And I think the future of transport bill, as and when that comes forward, will be important. So the role of influencing policy is ongoing, and I think I don't think it's overstating to say that it is as important now, if not more important than it's ever been. But we're also seeing quite a bit of traction with ministers finally starting to understand what we're saying, which I think is really positive. Okay, I think that's it from me in terms of a roundup. So hopefully that's been helpful to understand the sort of range of things that CoMo is doing and has been doing. We can go to the next slide, please. I've forgotten this one. So yes, new work areas. So here is a map of current e-scooter trials. So that's an amazing map, really. This is work that CoMo has been involved in throughout, but it would be wrong to say that there are no others involved. I mean, you look at the number of operators on here, many of whom I think probably on the call. So a huge amount of work that's been done in the last year, going from zero to this. So I think that's very impressive, and obviously DFT and all the local authorities have been involved. So it's a joint effort. I think if we'd said at the last AGM that this was going to happen, we would be surprised. So I think it's, there'll be some learnings, and there's been some things that have gone very well and some things less well. But yeah, it's impressive that we've got to where we have in a short period. I mentioned that CoMo is doing increasing amount of work in digital demand responsive transport, and we welcome Adam to the board from Arriva. We also have a group of operators that are working much more closely with CoMoUK, so I'm looking forward to seeing what support we can provide there. Mobility hubs, we're now at the point where we have the first accredited mobility hub in London, and a range of other mobility hubs which are having conversations with CoMo about becoming accredited in the future. And then shared cargo bikes and e-cargo bikes. We've had our first public on-street scheme launched in Hackney, and there are a number of other schemes which are in gestation or just about to be launched. Manchester is one I know. So this is another area which is expanding, and I can, there will be more bullets to be added here over time. So it's just to demonstrate CoMo's continues to make sure that we're addressing new needs that come forward. Great, thank you very much. And accreditation, I should always mention accreditation. So this has been one of the areas that CoMo has its previous incarnations as Car Plus, then Car Plus Bike Plus, has accredited car club operators for a long time. There are now 7 car club operators across the UK accredited, and 14 bike share operators accredited. As I mentioned, we now have this Mobility Hub accreditation, which is new in the last year. So that's setting quality standards for the design, implementation and operation of mobility hubs. So welcome you to have a look at the guidance that's on the website. And indeed, if there are new operators across those other modes, yeah, welcome you to explore what accreditation means. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think now I'm going to invite Richard back to the stage, and I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions or points they want to raise. If you can raise your hand, then I will facilitate those questions. And whilst you're thinking about your questions, I might just peruse the chat to see if we've got any comments here. I see Kate's saying there's a big gap in West Yorkshire on the e-scooter. Yeah, we can change that. And Antonia has posted some links to various guidance. Okay, I'm just checking if we have any hands of questions. Questions or comments are welcome. Mark.
Thanks. I was typing a question, but I'll leave it. So there was a tweet yesterday from somebody who'd gone to Cambridge with their son and said it would be good to be able to hire, who was under whatever, well, I didn't have a driving license, who said it'd be good to be able to hire a scooter and get around Cambridge supervised. So I was wondering, well, two things. One is the future, obviously, what happens after the trials and what you're doing on that. And the other is the issue of the whole issue of licensing, like driving license required, maybe an issue of allowing, an adult to hire a scooter for a younger person with them accompanied. So is that something that you'll be working on in future?
So I guess the question is, will CoMo be having a view on the need for a driving license for and feeding that into discussions? Richard,
yeah, and also what happens after the trials, if you finish.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Mark. So on the second one first, the after the trials, no one knows right now. It's a debate going on within government at this moment as to whether they will take forwards legalization or not, and if so, how? But that's a secondary question. Our view on that is clear that there should be legalization. I think it's worth defining what we mean by that. So that's not to say legalization of any kind of e-kick scooter. A part of that would be to establish appropriate vehicle standards for e-kick scooters, just as we have for every other transport mode. That's quite a significant process, obviously, and that would be quite a lot of heavy lifting from government, but that's what's necessary here. That's what every other developed country has either gone through or is going through right now. So the UK is now very much the outlier on this. And I think there's several reasons why that is our view. One is that we feel, as far as we can judge, although I've got to say that we, like everybody else, haven't had the DFT data published yet. So there is that caveat around judgments on the trials. But from what we can see, the trials have gone well. And that's in terms of usage, but also in terms of incidents, which is, of course, not to minimize incidents that have happened, and also in terms of mode shift. But I do caveat all of that with saying we have not got access to this across the piece data gathering and analysis, which government has promised to publish soon for quite some time now. I think second reason is that we have this enormous decarbonisation challenge. Matt threw up the transport decarbonisation plan front page there, I think quite rightly. And while Shared gets some time in the sun there, I'm of course working to get it more such time, as I believe the evidence case is very strong that it should have. In other words, we're going to just need to do more of sustainable micromobility options that work for people. And I think e-kick scooters fit into that. I think there's also a need to look not just at e-kick scooters here, so that to look at powered micromobility generally, and to set up mechanisms whereby, as innovations come forwards in the market, there is a process by which government in the lead and then down to local authorities can look at what they want to have on their streets and what they don't. That will be that'll be future-proof. So that's a very important part of any primary legislation we're going to get, is to create secondary powers that enable that to be done, so that, in other words, we don't enshrine something in 2022 or 2023 that dates very, very quickly, and then we're stuck waiting for another window on primary legislation. I mean, let's reflect here that from a shared transport point of view, this would be, in many ways, the first piece of primary legislation that touches in some way on shared transport, if it indeed does that. So we could be waiting an awful long time in the shared transport sector. Third part of it is that we are the outlier nation, as I said, and so I don't see that the current situation is at all sustainable. So to your Cambridge question, we've got that teenager frozen out of the trials because of the requirement to have a driving license. They could, of course, legally go and buy an e-scooter that they would own, but as we all probably on this call know, it would then be illegal for them to ride it on the public highway. It's a completely nonsensical position that's quite difficult to explain to people, even more or less impossible to enforce in any consistent way, although police forces are doing, targeted interventions. It's just a mess. And I don't see that carrying on with not legalizing a good version of e-kick scooter and having a look more widely, as I said, that's the way to go. If we don't do that, we just have this ever increasing tide, which becomes more and more unenforceable against, of completely unregulated e-kick scooters out there. And one of my first face-to-face speaking things in the summer was where somebody was rather similarly, reporting on the 14-year-old's birthday present, which they'd been innocently given, which was lawfully confiscated by the police on their first ride. This is a crazy world to be in, and we're trying to get more people on two-wheeled things very broadly and out of four-wheeled motorized things, whether they're EVs or not, indeed. So there's a lot going into that. What are we doing about all this? So we've been liaising with the DFT very, very closely for this whole stretch of the trials and the gestation of what I hope still will be the future of transport bill, but let us see. We are mulling on doing something in public next year to say to government, effectively, please get on with this. We haven't done that to date. We've been doing that behind the scenes. But if it is still stuck, because as it stands, the trials have a couple more hoops to jump through, but essentially they're extended through to November next year. Then they run out of time again. And I think there is something that gets more and more difficult and more odd about saying we're continually retrialing a mode which is very well established in most other developed countries, and no, we haven't got any committed plans as to what we're going to do after that. That doesn't strike me as tenable either.
Thanks very much, Richard. I think that yes.
Oh, sorry, driving licenses, Mark. I feel like you were getting into, so what's our thought on that? I mean, well,
this father basically said, or the tweet said, I could just hire two bikes on my driving license,
yes,
and pretend I was with somebody else and go, oops, I didn't know. Or he said, or I could put my son on the front of one scooter, which obviously is not a good idea either.
No, it's not, and not what they're designed for. Yeah, so I think the driving license is, we just took a sort of collateral damage, if you like, so that in the sense of that requirement being necessary under the particular legislative route that government had to get trials going. Better to get trials going than to not have trials, but having a driving license requirement, in my view, is disproportionate, in the abstract. And as we hopefully go forward to legislation, we will not be in favour of driving licenses to ride e-kick scooters. By e-kick scooters, I mean things that are, roughly in the realm of the e-bike in terms of top speed, power, etc., etc. There is an important thing here about definitions, back to the vehicle standards point. If we're then talking about things that can do 30 or 40 or 50 miles an hour, they may well have a place, but it's going to be on the carriageway, and that would seem appropriate to have a license requirement there. But if we're talking about lower speed, lower acceleration things, then we don't have that for bikes and e-bikes. It's obviously very exclusive to people, and instinctively I wouldn't be in favour of that.
Thanks. I think my understanding is it's also a provisional license, which is a strange one. So you don't actually have to pass your test. And
That is correct. The further
So that would mean
the-
that would allow
the-
16-year-olds. That would allow 16-year-olds on a moped license, for example, to do it.
provisional driving license.
But isn't that the same thing? It's just anyway. That's
No,
very technical.
age-wise, you're correct, Mark. It also, by a quirk, police can give you a driving license, even if you don't have one, as their way of punishing you if you are on one when you shouldn't be, which is an interesting further wrinkle.
Driving license with points on. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark, for your question. Others with questions, comments, thoughts? I was just going to say that I think, so we are on the 15th of December 2021.
Yes, I wanted to do some questions.
Oh, we've got, if we have this AGM in 12 months' time, it will be the 15th of December 2022. I suspect we'll be having the same conversation, but let's hope we're not. Great. I'm not going to keep everyone hanging on if there's no further comments. But what I will say is thank you very much to CoMo staff for your hard work this year. It has been another roller coaster of a year. Those of you who are on the call who aren't members, I'd encourage you to join either as associate members if you're a business, or as friends of CoMo if you are not a business. I'd encourage you to sign up for the CoMoUK newsletter. I'm sure most people are. And it just leaves me to wish on behalf of the board and staff, everyone a very happy Christmas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. And can I add my thanks to the board and to all the CoMo staff for all the great hard work and support you give us.
Thanks very much. Good night.